remembers what it was like to be 18 years old. Some of us may have to dust off a few cobwebs to remember, me included, no judgment. Imagine you are 18 years old and you decide to move far away from home and get a job. This job is no ordinary job. It has some intense requirements such as rigorous training and always being on call. It requires a new way of thinking and many sacrifices over many years. However, this job also gives you a family and a strong sense of belonging and purpose. Imagine you were trained to do a certain thing within this job. Let's say your boss wanted you to train to run a marathon. For years, as you were working, you were also training to run someday if asked to do so. Now, let's say you decide to leave this job because your body is tired, or because you are going to have a baby, or because physically you have to. But when you leave, your boss had never asked you to run the marathon. When you are finally done working, you may have feelings of inadequacy because you never actually ran that marathon. This job is serving in the U.S. military, and this marathon is combat and/or deployments. From the second a service member enters the military, they are trained for moments of combat and/or deployment. The story I told you is a narrative for many women and men who have served our country. But today, our focus will be the minority, female veterans. These women have left their families, and they have put their bodies and minds through rigorous training. Some of them have seen combat and/or deployments. Some of them ran that marathon they were trained for, and some of them did not. But this does not diminish the fact that their bodies and minds have taken a toll through training and that they serve their country. When females reintegrate back into society from the military, they are often overlooked. And as the late Kate Hendricks Thomas, a former public health professor, would say, they are invisible. I recently graduated from Rocky Mountain College with my doctorate in occupational therapy. Occupational therapy, or OT as we like to call it, uses occupations as a means of rehabilitation. An occupation can be anything that is meaningful to a person or something a person wants to do or needs to do. The easiest way to understand what we do would be through an example such as this. If you were to have a stroke and could no longer use the left side of your body because the stroke paralyzed it, you would likely see an OT, and they would teach you how to get dressed, shower, eat, etc. in a new way. That is the basic definition. However, we do much more, and we have a very large scope of practice. We can work in an array of settings such as hospitals, outpatient clinics, and even the military. We can also work with many different conditions, both mental and physical. During my studies at Rocky, I had an amazing professor, Dr. Amanda Carroll, who has her PhD in occupational science, which is the research side of OT. As Dr. Carroll would call me, I am a justice-oriented girly. So when I started working with the veteran population and understanding what issues some of these females were facing, it did not sit right with me. Therefore, while I am not a veteran, I do consider myself an advocate for the population. As part of my studies at Rocky, I had created a capstone project that was research-based and qualitative in nature to better understand what female veteran experiences and resources were like within the state of Montana. I wanted to see if needs were being met and how healthcare professionals and/or Montana community members could better serve our female veterans. But what that really means is I was the fortunate person who got to sit down with female veterans and hear their stories. I got to better understand some organizations' perspectives, and now I have the privilege to share this knowledge so we can better help this population. These veterans told me about their experiences in the military. They talked about how the dynamics with other females in the service can be tricky, and that just because they are both female does not automatically imply a friendship. Some of them had differing views on things such as military sexual trauma or meeting physical fitness or weight standards within the service. However, they had similar views on bonds created through military service. They described what it was like preparing for combat, and that through this training, bonds that erased bias were created. They described the difficulties of getting out of the military and reintegrating into the civilian society, the stress of coming home to a new life with taxes and rent, the struggles of going from always being surrounded by other service members to being completely alone. They described their struggles to find their veteran identity and the guilt harbored from never seeing combat, never being deployed, never running that marathon. They shared with me their victories of living in Montana, as well as their struggles in finding resources. They talked about finding a new purpose and belonging in life after the military, and they talked about their hopes for the future of serving veterans. There are many, many things discussed in these conversations that I would love to give light to. But today, I want to focus on two main points: identity and culture. Now, not every female veteran will struggle with the things that I am about to discuss. One big finding of this study was understanding the importance of individual-specific care. Each female veteran is different. Some may prefer to be referred to as a veteran with the word female omitted. It is all up to the individual. This study is not generalizable because it was small. However, it does contain 6 valuable perspectives and stories, which can help us make a difference in the areas that have been identified as problematic for some of these veterans. As occupational therapists, we are trained to have a unique view on identity and culture. We understand that people go through role changes and how important purpose is to an individual's life. We are also trained to look at cultural dynamics when treating people and the importance of holistic care. Research has shown loss of identity, purpose, and belonging is extremely common for veterans during reintegration. These themes were echoed in my research as well. It has been shown by therapeutic recreational specialists and researchers Brent Hawkins and Brandy Crow that female veterans may face unique challenges when it comes to reintegration, such as a lack of female-specific services and societal understanding that females are veterans too. One of my participants told me that to this day, she will walk into the VA and be asked if she is there for her husband. I am as guilty as the next person. When I see a veteran's license plate, I assume that a male probably drives the vehicle. However, after learning what I have, I am trying to reframe my thinking, which is why I am here today, to bring cultural awareness of veterans that are female and help you understand your role as a community member or healthcare professional in this area. Culture is seen across the world, and culture is a beautiful thing. Montana has a unique culture of its own, which was brought up in this research. It was described that in Montana we are raised tough and we are raised proud, which as a Montana native, I can attest to. The heavy drinking culture, high suicide rates, and stigma around mental health within our state was discussed by some of the veterans. And if you know anything about the military or military culture, you may be seeing some parallels. It was also identified that our state has a lack of resources, specifically for female veterans. Montana is a very large, spread out state, and because of that, it can make access to a VA clinic upwards of 2 hours. That is where our beloved community-based veteran organizations come into play. Because of the rurality of our state, organizations in our communities that serve veterans are vital to providing and filling gaps in care. We have some amazing organizations throughout our state. However, it was identified that many of these organizations are male-dominated or male-oriented, which can make seeking services in these spaces hard for some women. It was also revealed that in some rural areas, there are only male service providers, and due to culture, a male may not feel comfortable addressing female issues, so these concerns are going unaddressed. Finding that veteran identity may be complicated for some female veterans, especially if they were not in combat or deployed. This is a concept that is rising in the literature. According to researchers Rachel Hoopsick et al., there can be negative emotions tied to non-deployment status among National Guard and Reserve soldiers. Some of the veterans in my study discussed that non-deployment or non-combat guilt can make identifying as a veteran or seeking services difficult. This may be due to feelings that someone else needs help more than they do, or feelings of inadequacy, feelings that they did not earn the right to resources or services available to veterans because they never saw a deployment or combat. It was discussed that females have different experiences than their male comrades inside and outside of service. If we combine the minority aspect of being a female veteran, the non-combat or non-deployment status, and living in a culture like Montana, this can create a difficult dynamic for female veterans seeking help for issues they may be facing. I propose we change this dynamic And that starts with understanding and promoting this unique veteran identity and culture within our communities. But how do we do this? As both community members and healthcare providers, I am sure that we come across more female veterans than we are aware of. So take the initiative to gain cultural sensitivity with this population. There is a plethora of research, podcasts, books, documentaries, anything you can think of out there to enhance your understanding. One of my participants stated that she would like to see a cultural shift in mindset. And the beautiful thing is we have the power to do this. Whether you are a community member or healthcare provider, you can ask. Ask if a female served in the armed forces. If you work in healthcare, this opens a door to provide options to make the veteran feel most comfortable. For example, asking if they would prefer to meet with a male or female provider. Asking questions can remind them of their great strengths that they have gained through service. One of my colleagues showed me that once we know a female is a veteran, we can use these strengths to help guide them through difficult times. We have a unique opportunity to get involved with veterans. Create a veteran group. Ask a veteran out to coffee. Work out together. Do a Bible study together. The sky is the limit. These simple actions can lead to female-oriented groups that highlight female veterans. These simple actions can help us create that cultural shift in mindset. This does not have to be a big, daunting task. We can start with little things, like when you see a female wearing a US Navy hat, consider that maybe she is a veteran. Consider asking her about it. Consider making her feel that the society she gave her time for is aware of her. Let her know that her training for that marathon has not gone unnoticed, regardless of whether it was run or not. Thank you.